Quite startling, even shocking documentary was aired in Britain a week ago. It was called Edward VIII, Britain's Traitor King. And it claims that the former king advised the Nazis to keep bombing England during World War II and also passed information to Germany that helped it conquer France in 1940. Now, we already knew that Edward, who abdicated in 1936 to marry the divorcee American Wallis Simpson, that he visited Nazi Germany the following year as the Duke of Windsor in what looked very much like a state visit. And he even met Hitler in a very friendly meeting. But these latest revelations go a lot further. Now, this documentary was based on the work of author Andrew Lownie, who knows a bit about traitors. He wrote an excellent biography. I've got it here. I recommend it. Stalin's Englishman, The Lives of Guy Burgess, spy for Russia. And he's now written Traitor King about Edward. And Andrew Lownie joins me now from London. Andrew Lownie, thank you so much for your time. What do you say that the Duke of Windsor actually did?
Well, he did two things. First of all, he had a job inspecting the French defences in the autumn of 1939. He passed this report back to the British, who didn't seem to show much interest, but it revealed that the Maginot Line wasn't impenetrable. You could just go around the side of it. And this information was passed to a man called Charles Beddoe, who was a German agent who had actually lent him his castle to get married in the summer of 1937. And Beddoe passed that material back to the German ambassador in The Hague, who passed it back to Ribbentrop. And this, of course, can be traced in documents which were found after the war, which we've known about for 60 years, these captured German documents, which were supposed to have been destroyed, but in fact were saved. And there was a huge fight after the war to try and suppress them. The second bit of information is that there was a plan called Operation Willie in the summer of 1940 to entice him to Britain as a puppet king should Germans invade Britain. And the line up to now is that he didn't really know what these approaches were about. But it's very clear from the papers I've seen, and these are papers in the Royal Archives, in the National Archives in London, but also private papers all over the world, that he actively engaged in this intrigue. He knew that the Germans were propositioning him. He actually made suggestions about how best they might subjugate Britain, including your remark about bombing London. So I think that the jury no longer could be out. It's absolutely clear that Edward VIII was a traitor and frankly should have been executed.
That's extraordinary stuff. Can you tell us the two bits of information, how to go around the Maginot Line, which is on the border, and bomb London into submission? Were they influential in any way? Did the Germans take any notice of this, act on it?
Yes, the Germans changed their war plans almost immediately, and that's exactly how they invaded France in May 1940. So I think there can be any doubt about that. And the evidence, again, for his intriguing with the Germans, which includes communications with them in code during wartime about him coming back, even though he was eventually threatened with court-martial by Winston Churchill and posted to the Bahamas as governor. Even on his way to the Bahamas, he was in contact with a German agent called Espirito de Santo, saying that if the opportunity arose, Germany did invade Britain, then he was ready to come back. So, and the fact that there was such an extensive cover-up of this after the war shows that it was a very, very serious matter. It's confirmed in diaries of MI5 officials, the King's private secretary, Tommy Lascelles, and others. This is based on over 1,000 footnotes from primary material around the world.
It's quite extraordinary, but why did he do it? I mean, did he mean to betray Britain? Did he actually mean for the German generals to know how best to deal with the Maginot Line or anything like that? Can he claim it was inadvertent in somehow?
No, he saw himself as a German. He was pretty much 14th, 16th German. He spoke fluent German. He believed in what he called the Führerprinzip. He was anti-Semitic all his life. One of his best friends was Oswald Mosley, who ran the fascists in Britain. And he'd always had a lot of support from the British Union of Fascism. But the fact is that he felt it was a mixture of private and personal and public. He felt resentful of the fact, the way he'd been treated by his family. They weren't taking his report seriously. They weren't giving his wife a title. He was being exiled. There were debates over money. And this was his way of getting back. And he genuinely believed that the Germans and the British were soulmates, and their energy should be directed at communist Russia. So, others had believed this up to, let's say, 1938, but no one was actually intriguing with the Germans. And even when he went to the Bahamas, he was trying to deal with the isolationists, trying to prevent them from coming into the war so a deal could be done with Germany.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there was always a lot of talk about how mean Queen Elizabeth was to him, and people would say, well, look, she was freezing him out, treating him like dirt because she blamed him for the death of her father, who was then made king in his stead, and the stress and all that. But it seems to me it's open to suggest that she was filthy on him because he was a traitor.
Absolutely, and we know, I see that from the Royal Archives papers, and that Churchill would have nothing to do with him after the war. He refused to go on a cruise with him. There have been concerns about Edward VIII even before he came to the throne. His father had put him under MI5 surveillance. Politicians like Baldwin prayed that he would be killed steeplechasing. The last thing they wanted was him to come to the throne because of his pro-German views and because of his desire to meddle in politics away from his constitutional role. And so Wallace gave him the pretext in some ways to maneuver him off the throne. So she saved this country. But it puts a fresh light on the abdication crisis. And of course, there were huge controversies within the family about finances. He had actually tricked the family into claiming that he had less money than he really had.
Look, I've only got about 30 seconds left, but for me, there are irresistible parallels between the lives of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor and Prince Harry and his American divorcee, Meghan Markle. No, absolutely not suggesting for a second that Harry would betray his country, but there are other parallels here, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. The same way of curating the story, suing the press, writing, having tame biographers, debates over parenting, finances, security, and using the royal brand to endorse products. I'm afraid the playbook goes on and on.
Well, as the twig is bent, I guess. Andrew Lownie, thank you so much. What a fascinating insight. Appreciate you coming on tonight.